The silence inside the SUV was more cutting than any scream. My son Daniel's words were still ringing in my ears. "If you're not going to do what I want, then you can stay on the street. Get out of here." When the door slammed shut and the car sped away, leaving me alone in the dark on a desolate road at 65 years old with no money and no phone, I knew something inside me had died forever. What I never could have imagined was that right there, on that night of despair near the foothills of the Rockies, a woman in a wheelchair would appear. She took my hand and whispered, "Pretend to be my daughter, my dear. Your son and his wife are going to regret this bitterly." But before I go on, make sure you're already subscribed to the channel and drop a comment below. What part of the country or the world are you watching this video from? We love to see how far our stories travel. My name is Eleanor, and until that night, I prided myself on having raised a brilliant son. Daniel was a successful lawyer, married to Megan, a beautiful and ambitious woman. I had given them everything I had, my house, my savings, my trust, all in the name of love. When I had a mild stroke 6 months ago, they took me into their home, but every day was a new humiliation. I would hear Megan complaining about the extra work, the cost of my medications, the space I was taking up in their luxurious Denver condo. That afternoon, we had set out for what Daniel called a special drive. We drove for hours. I was confused but happy to be out of the house after weeks of being confined. When it started to rain, we got into an argument about my will, which Daniel insisted I change, leaving everything to him and nothing to my niece, Chloe, who had always cared for me. "Don't you understand, Mother? I'm the one taking care of you now," he shouted. When I refused, the car stopped abruptly on the shoulder of a secondary road, the kind that winds up into the dark mountains. "Get out," Megan ordered from the passenger seat, not even turning to look at me. "But it's raining, Daniel. Where are we?" "Either you sign the papers or you get out right here. We're sick of your ingratitude," Daniel replied, with a coldness I had never seen in his eyes. When I tried to argue, he simply got out of the car, opened the back door, and pulled me by the arm. I fell into the mud, my legs too weak to hold me. The rain mixed with my tears as I watched my own son and his wife abandon me, accelerating into the darkness without looking back. I stayed there, sitting in the muck, the icy drops running down my wrinkled face. The dark sky seemed to be crashing down on me. There were no houses nearby, just a poorly lit road and the sound of the rain. The purse that was in the car held my documents, my medications, and the little money I still had. Everything was gone. I tried to get up, but my body trembled with cold and fear. My knees gave out and I fell back to the ground. It was then that I heard the sound of wheels on the wet asphalt. I thought it was Daniel, coming back in regret. But when I turned, I saw a different silhouette emerging from the mist. It was an elderly lady in an electric wheelchair, protected by a clear raincoat. Behind her, a tall man held a huge umbrella. She stopped in front of me, her piercing eyes fixed on my desolate face. "It was your son, wasn't it?" she asked in a firm voice that contrasted with her frail body. I couldn't answer. I just nodded as the tears kept falling. "Come with me," she said. "Pretend you're my daughter. Your son and his wife are going to bitterly regret what they did today." "Who are you? How do you know?" I stammered, confused and scared. She smiled, a smile that combined wisdom and determination. "My name is Matilda Sterling, and I know an abandonment when I see one. Come on, before you catch pneumonia." The man accompanying her approached, extending his hand to help me. I hesitated for a moment, but what did I have to lose? I was alone, without money, without documents, without medication, abandoned in the rain. I accepted the outstretched hand, and he helped me to my feet. "This is Arthur, my assistant," Matilda explained. "My car is right over there. You're going to be all right now." As Arthur guided me towards a black car parked a few meters away, I looked at Matilda and saw something in her eyes that sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't just kindness, it was an iron determination, as if she knew exactly what she was doing and why. I had no idea that that night would mark the beginning of such a profound transformation in my life, nor that this mysterious woman in her wheelchair held secrets that would forever change my understanding of family, revenge, and above all, myself. The interior of the car was luxurious and warm, a shocking contrast to the mud and rain that covered me. Arthur placed a blanket over my trembling legs while Matilda watched me with a disconcerting intensity. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice still trembling. "To my home," Matilda replied. "Don't worry, you'll be safe there." I looked out the window, watching the desolate road disappear as we followed a path I didn't know. It was strange how, in a matter of minutes, my life had taken such a radical turn. Suddenly, I realized I was in a car with strangers, with no one in the world knowing where I was. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. "Because I know how it feels," she said simply. "I know what it's like to be discarded by the one who should protect you." Arthur kept his eyes on the road, impassive, as the car drove through the storm. After about 30 minutes, we turned onto a private road that climbed a hill. When the headlights illuminated what was ahead, my breath caught. It was an imposing mountain estate, a modern mansion with huge windows and a majestic entrance. The kind of place you see in movies, not in real life. Arthur parked under an elegant carport and got out to open the door for Matilda, activating the mechanism that lowered the platform for her wheelchair. "Let's go inside," she told me. "There's dry clothing waiting for you and a room prepared." The inside of the mansion was even more impressive. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, antique furniture that seemed to have stories to tell. A housekeeper greeted us at the door, showing no surprise at seeing me soaked and confused. "Clara, this is Eleanor," Matilda announced. "She'll be staying with us for a while. Please prepare a hot bath and take her to the blue room." Clara nodded and led me up a magnificent staircase. I followed her in silence, still too stunned to ask questions. The room was spacious and elegant, with a huge bed and windows overlooking a garden that I could barely make out in the darkness. The hot bath was a balm for my aching body. I found silk pajamas on the bed and soft robes in the closet. Everything there seemed to have been prepared to receive me, as if my arrival was expected. This feeling sent shivers down my spine. When I came downstairs again, I found Matilda in the living room, next to a roaring fireplace. Her wheelchair was strategically positioned in front of the flames, and she watched the fire with a thoughtful expression. "Sit down, Eleanor," she said, indicating an armchair beside her. "Clara will bring tea and something to eat." I obeyed, still feeling like I was in a strange dream. "How do you know my name?" I asked, realizing I had never introduced myself. Matilda smiled. "I know many things about you. Your son, Daniel, your daughter-in-law, Megan, the house you left them, the stroke you had 6 months ago. I even know about your niece, Chloe, whom Daniel wants to exclude from the will." I froze. "How is that possible?" "I have my methods," she replied vaguely. "The important thing is that I know you don't deserve what they did, and believe me, they are going to pay for this." "I don't want revenge," I muttered, although a part of me didn't believe my own words. "I just want to understand why my own son—" "Money and power change people, Eleanor," Matilda interrupted, "but not always for the better. Daniel and Megan think they can do whatever they want without consequences. We are going to show them they are wrong." Clara entered with a tray of tea and cookies. As she served, I watched Matilda more closely. Despite the wheelchair, there was something undeniably powerful about her. Her white hair was impeccably styled, her clothes were elegant, and her hands, though wrinkled, bore discreet but visibly expensive jewelry. "Who are you, really?" I asked when Clara left. Matilda took a sip of tea before answering. I am someone who learned that justice doesn't always come through conventional paths, and tomorrow you are going to find out exactly what that means." That night, lying in the luxurious bed of that mysterious mansion, I couldn't sleep. The image of Daniel abandoning me in the rain mixed with Matilda's enigmatic face and her unsettling words. Something told me that my life would never be the same again, and I was right. The next morning, I woke up disoriented. For a moment, I thought I was at home, that the whole nightmare of the previous night had been just a bad dream, but the elegant and unfamiliar room around me confirmed the harsh reality. My son had abandoned me on a desolate road, and now I was in the mansion of a stranger who seemed to know too much about my life. I found new clothes folded on a chair, all in my size, which only added to the mystery. I put on a simple but elegant outfit and went downstairs, following the smell of fresh coffee. Matilda was in the dining room, her wheelchair positioned at the head of a long, polished table. Arthur stood behind her, a silent and watchful shadow. When she saw me, she smiled. "Good morning, Eleanor. I hope you slept well." "I confess, not much," I replied honestly, sitting in the place she indicated. "I have many questions." "And you will have answers," she guaranteed as Clara served coffee and a full breakfast. "But first, we need to address more urgent matters. Your documents, for example." "They were in my purse, in Daniel's car." "I've already procured new copies," she declared casually, as if she were talking about the weather. "How? That's impossible in such a short time." She smiled again, that mysterious smile that was beginning to unnerve me. "I have connections and money, two things that make life much easier, Eleanor." I watched her more closely as we ate. There was something familiar about her, although I was sure I had never seen her before. "Daniel must have noticed my absence by now," I commented. "Don't worry about that. He's not going to look for you." "How can you be so sure?" Matilda gestured to Arthur, who immediately picked up a tablet and handed it to me. On the screen was a text message sent from my number to Daniel. "Son, I got a ride with a friend. I'm going to stay with her for a while. I need to think about everything. Don't look for me." "But I don't have a phone." Mine was, "In your purse?" "I know," Matilda completed. "That text was sent from a new number, registered in your name, but one that Daniel doesn't know. He'll think you changed your phone." I was dumbfounded by the level of planning. Why all this effort? Why do you care what happened to me? Matilda set her cutlery aside and faced me with an intensity that made me shiver. Because Daniel and Megan are not the first people to abandon someone vulnerable for greed. And I swore that, as long as I live, I would use my resources to ensure that people like them face the consequences of their actions. After breakfast, Matilda invited me for a walk in the mansion's gardens. Arthur pushed her wheelchair while I walked beside her, still processing everything that was happening. The garden was a spectacle in itself, with fragrant rose bushes, ornate fountains, and marble statues. We stopped under an elegant gazebo, where Matilda dismissed Arthur with a gesture. "Eleanor," she began when we were alone, "there's something I need to show you." She took a small remote control from her pocket and pressed a button. To my surprise, a panel slid open on the gazebo floor, revealing an embedded digital screen. With another button, the screen lit up, showing an image I recognized instantly, the house where I used to live with Daniel and Megan. "What is this?" I asked, alarmed. "I have cameras installed at several strategic points around your old house," she explained calmly. "Watch." The image changed, showing Daniel and Megan in the living room. There was no sound, but it was clear they were arguing. Daniel seemed nervous, running his hands through his hair repeatedly, while Megan gestured angrily. "They're arguing about you," Matilda said. "Megan is worried you might have gone to the police. Daniel is assuring her you wouldn't, that you were always too weak to confront them." I felt a deep pain seeing my son talk about me that way, even without hearing his words. How could he know me so little? "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, feeling tears welling up. So that you understand who you are dealing with. They are not sorry, Eleanor. They are only worried about the consequences for themselves. The image changed again, showing Daniel in his study on the phone. He looked agitated. He's talking to his lawyer now, Matilda explained. He's asking what happens to your inheritance if you disappear long enough to be declared dead. I felt my heart clench. Is my son planning my death? Not exactly, but he's exploring options to benefit from your absence. I closed my eyes, unable to keep watching. Why are you doing this? Why do you care so much about my situation? Matilda turned off the screen, and the panel slid back into the gazebo floor. For a long moment she remained silent, looking out at the gardens with a distant expression. 20 years ago, she began finally, I was a very different woman. Healthy, active, with a promising career as a judge. I had one son, Edward, and an ambitious daughter-in-law, Gabriella. Her voice trembled slightly, the first sign of vulnerability I had seen in her. When I had an accident that left me paraplegic, they took me into their home. At first, everything seemed fine, but gradually the comments started, the complaints, the humiliations, exactly like what happened to you. I felt a chill as I realized the similarities between our stories. One night, after an argument about money, they took me for a drive. Edward stopped the car in an isolated area and abandoned me there in my wheelchair with no phone, no money, no anything. Oh my God, I whispered, horrified. I was there for hours until a couple found me and called the police. When I was rescued, I made a decision. I would never be a victim again, and I would use everything I had, my legal knowledge, my connections, my money, to get revenge and to help other people in the same situation. And what happened to your son? I asked, afraid of the answer. A grim smile formed on her lips. Edward and Gabriella lost everything, absolutely everything. It took me years, but I managed to prove they had embezzled money from the company where they worked. He was arrested. She left him. When Edward got out of prison, he was a broken man. No money, no wife, no future. The way she spoke without a hint of remorse scared me. And you didn't feel sorry? He was your son. He stopped being my son the moment he left me to die on that road, she replied coldly. Since then, I've helped other women like us, Eleanor. Women betrayed by those who were supposed to protect them. And what do you plan to do to Daniel and Megan? I asked, my heart racing. The same, she replied simply. I am going to ruin them completely, unless you ask me to stop. I looked at her, confused. Why would you give me that choice? Because revenge must be a conscious choice, Eleanor. I don't want you to blame me later when you realize the extent of what I am going to do. You need to decide. Do you want your son and his wife to pay for what they did, or do you prefer to just move on? I looked at the immaculate gardens around us, trying to process everything I had discovered. A part of me wanted to scream, "No, stop!" to protect Daniel despite everything, but another part, a part I barely recognized in myself, wanted to see him face the consequences of his actions. I need time to think, I finally replied. Time is something we have plenty of, Matilda said, maneuvering her wheelchair to return to the mansion. But remember, while you're thinking, they are planning how to get rid of you permanently. I followed her back to the house, feeling as if I were walking a tightrope between the past and a future I could barely imagine. In the days that followed, I lived in a strange limbo. Matilda's mansion was like a world apart, protected and isolated from reality. I was introduced to the staff besides Clara and Arthur. There were gardeners, security guards, and a team of people working in offices in the basement whose exact functions were never clear. Every morning, Matilda would show me new footage from Daniel's house. I saw my son and Megan go on with their lives normally, showing no remorse, arguing about how they would divide my assets if I never returned. The pain I felt watching those scenes was indescribable, but Matilda insisted I needed to see. The truth hurts, but delusion kills, she would say. One particularly cold morning, Matilda took me to a part of the mansion I hadn't seen yet. It was a kind of gallery with portraits on the walls and objects in display cases. It looked like a private museum. "These are the other women I've helped," she explained as Arthur slowly pushed her chair down the hallway. "Each one has her story, her pain, her redemption." I looked at the portraits of women of different ages. They all had a look that mixed dignity and determination. Under each photo was a small plaque with a name and 2 dates. "What do those dates mean?" I asked. "The first is when they were abandoned. The second is when they obtained justice." At the end of the hallway, there was an empty space on the wall. "This place is reserved for you," Matilda said with an enigmatic smile. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. A middle-aged woman, elegant and with an air of authority, introduced herself as Sophia Alcazar, Matilda's personal lawyer. She brought a folder full of documents. "Mrs. Vance," she began formally, "I am here to discuss your legal options." "Legal options?" I repeated, confused. "Yes. Matilda asked me to prepare different strategies depending on what you decide to do regarding your son and his wife." Sophia opened the folder and began to explain in clear but technical terms how we could proceed. One option was to simply ensure my safety and financial independence, annulling any power Daniel had over my assets. Another, more aggressive option involved reporting him for endangerment of a vulnerable person, which could result in serious legal consequences. And then there was the third option, which Sophia presented with a professional neutrality that contrasted with the gravity of what she suggested. We could ruin Daniel and Megan completely, using Matilda's resources and connections to expose frauds they don't even know they're committing. "Frauds? What frauds?" I asked, alarmed. "None yet," Sophia replied calmly, "but we could create convincing evidence." "That would be illegal," I murmured, horrified. "Technically, yes," Sophia admitted, "but Matilda has ways of ensuring nothing comes back to you. The choice is yours, Mrs. Vance. What do you wish to do?" When Sophia left, I sat alone in the library for hours, contemplating what to do. In the evening, Matilda found me still there, lost in thought. "Have you decided?" she asked, maneuvering her chair to be beside me. "How can I choose between protecting my son and protecting myself?" I replied, anguished. "He made that choice when he left you on that road," Matilda reminded me, her voice firm but not cruel. "Daniel chose money over you." "He's my son," I insisted, tears streaming down my face, "despite everything." Matilda took my hands in hers, and it was precisely because he is your son that the betrayal was so painful. Eleanor, you are not choosing between him and you. You are choosing between remaining a victim or taking back the reins of your life. And if I choose to do nothing, if I just want to leave, start over somewhere else, then I will respect your decision, she said. I will provide you with a place to live, comfortable and safe. But Daniel and Megan will continue to believe they can get away with what they did, and they will do the same to others. That night was the hardest since I arrived at the mansion. I dreamed of Daniel as a child, his smiling face when I took him to school, his first lost tooth, his graduation, his wedding. How had we reached this point? Where had I gone wrong? The next morning, I made my decision. I found Matilda in the garden, admiring the roses that were beginning to bloom with the approaching spring. I want them to know what they did, I said, my voice firmer than it had ever been. I want them to feel the weight of their actions, but I don't want to destroy them completely. Matilda studied me for a moment, as if assessing my resolve. Are you sure? Clemency can be interpreted as weakness. It's not clemency, I corrected. It's a choice. My choice. I want Daniel and Megan to lose what they value most, money, status. But I want to give them the chance to rebuild their lives as better people, the chance they didn't give me. A slow smile formed on Matilda's face. You are stronger than you imagine, Eleanor, and wiser than I was when I was in your place. That same afternoon, Sophia returned with new documents. The plan was simple but ingenious. We would reveal that Daniel had committed professional negligence in some cases, enough to tarnish his reputation and make him lose important clients, but not enough for him to be jailed or disbarred. As for Megan, we would uncover and expose some accounting manipulations she was making at the company where she worked. Again, enough for a demotion and loss of prestige, but not for termination. "And the house?" Sophia asked. "Technically, it's still yours." "I want it back," I replied without hesitation. "Not to live in, but to sell it and donate the money to institutions that help abandoned seniors." Matilda nodded in approval. "An excellent choice. And where do you plan to live?" That was a question I had no answer for. "I don't know. Maybe I'll rent a small apartment, something I can afford on my pension." "I have a better proposal," Matilda said. "Stay here. Become part of what I've built. Help me find and assist other women like us." I looked around at the imposing mansion, the meticulously cared-for gardens, the empire Matilda had built from her own pain. It was tempting, but terrifying. "Why me? You barely know me." "I know enough," she replied. "I saw how you reacted when you faced betrayal. I saw the compassion in your eyes even when you spoke of punishing your son. You have the balance that I lack, Eleanor. I tend to go too far. Perhaps you can teach me to find a middle ground." The proposal took me by surprise. "I need to think about it." "Naturally," she nodded. "But while you think, there's something I want to show you, something that might help with your decision." Matilda led me to a room I hadn't seen yet, on the second floor of the mansion. It was a large space, with several desks and computers, where a few people worked intently. On the walls were screens showing images from different locations, residences, offices, streets. "This is our operations center," she explained. "From here, we monitor the cases we take on." On one of the screens, I recognized Daniel's house. On another, I saw his law firm. A third showed the company where Megan worked. "We began implementing the plan this morning," Matilda said. "The first step was to send an anonymous email to Megan's boss, suggesting he check certain discrepancies in the accounts she manages." I watched, fascinated and horrified at the same time, as Matilda showed me how the plan would be executed over the next few days. It was like watching a play where I knew the ending, but not the details of how we would get there. "And now," she said, guiding me to a separate table, "we will prepare for your reappearance." My reappearance? Yes. When everything is in motion, you will return, not as the frail, dependent mother they abandoned, but as an independent and self-assured woman. This is crucial for the final phase of the plan. "What is it?" "The confrontation," Matilda replied, her eyes shining. "The moment you will look them in the eye and they will know they have lost." Matilda's mansion became my home in the following months. I learned to move through it as if I had always lived there, discovering its secrets and understanding its greater purpose. Every room, every object seemed to have a story to tell. Stories of women like me, who had been abandoned and then rescued. Sophia, the lawyer, became a constant presence. She guided me on legal matters and helped me understand each stage of the meticulously executed plan. The operations center was like an anthill, with people working day and night, monitoring Daniel and Megan, gathering information, planting small seeds of chaos in their lives. "The secret," Matilda explained one afternoon, "is to never make it seem like there's a plan. Every blow must feel like a coincidence, bad luck, or a natural consequence of their own actions." And so it was. First, small setbacks began to affect Daniel at work. An important email that never arrived, a client who inexplicably canceled, a file that disappeared from the system. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to make him nervous, irritable. As for Megan, the discrepancies in her accounts were discreetly pointed out to her supervisor. They weren't real frauds. Matilda made sure no one was falsely accused of a crime, but minor inconsistencies, that suggested incompetence, not dishonesty. "Why not just reveal that they abandoned me?" I asked once. "Wouldn't that be enough to ruin their reputations?" "It would be your word against theirs," Sophia explained. "And unfortunately, our society still tends to discredit older people, especially women. Daniel would probably claim you are confused, exaggerating, or even making things up out of resentment. It's more effective to attack what they truly value: professional success, money, status." I watched through the cameras as the life of my son and daughter-in-law began to slowly crumble. The arguments between them became more frequent and bitter. Daniel blamed Megan for spending too much. She accused him of being incompetent. They no longer had time for sophisticated scenes or parties with friends. Financial worry began to corrode their relationship. One night, I saw Daniel drinking alone in the living room, looking at an old photograph, a picture of us, from when he was a boy. For a moment, my heart ached. That was still my son, no matter how much he had hurt me. I wondered if I was going too far. "Doubts are normal," Matilda said, noticing my hesitation. "But remember, we are not destroying Daniel. We are giving him a chance to rediscover his values." Meanwhile, my own transformation continued. Sophia had recovered my documents and bank accounts. I now had access to the resources Daniel had tried to take from me. Moreover, Matilda insisted that I consult with medical specialists to properly treat the after effects of my stroke. "You've been neglected for too long," she said. "With the right treatment, physical therapy, and correct medication, my mobility and energy improved significantly. I also began working with a psychologist, Dr. Camilla, to process everything that had happened. The abandonment, the anger, the guilt I still felt for punishing my son. The real healing comes when you understand that you are not seeking revenge," Dr. Camilla said during one of our sessions. "You are re-establishing balance." 3 months passed like this, with Daniel and Megan facing increasing professional and financial difficulties while I grew stronger, physically and emotionally. Then the day Matilda had planned from the beginning arrived, the day of the confrontation. "Are you ready?" she asked when I entered the dining room that morning. I took a deep breath. "I think so." "You don't have to be sure," she said gently. "Fear is natural. But remember, you are no longer the woman they abandoned on that road." The plan was simple. Daniel and Megan had put the house up for sale, my house, which I had given them, to cover their growing debts. Sophia had arranged for me to show up as a potential buyer, accompanied by Matilda. Arthur drove us in a different car, more discreet than Matilda's usual limousine. The entire way, I tried to calm my racing heart. I was going to see my son again after months, but under circumstances he could never imagine. We arrived punctually at the scheduled time. The house, which I knew so well, seemed different now, colder, less cared for. Arthur helped Matilda with her wheelchair while I waited, wearing sunglasses and an elegant hat that partially concealed my face. The real estate agent greeted us at the door. "Mrs. Sterling," she greeted Matilda, "and this must be your friend, Mrs.?" "Eleanor," I replied simply. "Just Eleanor." We went inside. The house was staged for the visit, but I noticed small signs. "Are the owners here?" Matilda asked the agent. "Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Vance are home. They asked to be present during the viewings." My heart raced even faster as I heard footsteps approaching. And then there he was. Daniel, my son. Thinner and with deep dark circles under his eyes, but still with that confident walk he had inherited from his father. Beside him, Megan, tense and clearly stressed. "Good morning," Daniel said, extending his hand to Matilda first. "Daniel Vance, and this is my wife, Megan." "Matilda Sterling," she replied, accepting the handshake. "And this is my friend who is interested in the house." Daniel turned to me, his professional smile already on his face, ready to convince me to buy. But when I took off my sunglasses, the smile froze. His eyes widened in recognition and shock. "Mother?" he whispered, his face turning pale. Megan, who was beside him, let out a small gasp. "That's not possible. "Hello, Daniel," I said, my voice surprisingly firm. "Megan, I see you're selling my house." The silence that followed was thick, charged with tension. The agent, realizing something was wrong, muttered an excuse and discreetly moved to another room. "What? How? Where have you been?" Daniel stammered, still in shock. "Does it matter?" I asked, remaining calm. "After you abandoned me on that road, in the rain, I thought you made it very clear that you didn't care about my whereabouts." "I didn't. It wasn't exactly like that." He tried to argue, casting a desperate glance at Megan, who remained paralyzed. "It was exactly like that," I corrected. "You left me to die, Daniel, your own son." "We were stressed," Megan intervened, finding her voice. "You know how difficult it has been to care for you since the stroke. We didn't mean to leave me alone without money, without documents, without my medication," I finished. "How strange, because that's exactly what you did." Daniel took a step in my direction, his face a mixture of fear and calculation. Always the lawyer trying to assess the situation, find a way out. "Mom, we looked for you," he lied shamelessly. "We were desperate. We went back to that place, but you were already gone. We thought maybe you'd gotten a ride, and then we received your message saying you were with a friend." "What message?" I asked, feigning confusion. "My phone was in the car, with you." Daniel turned even paler. Matilda, who had been watching the scene in silence, decided to intervene. "Mr. Vance," she said with the authority of someone who spent years as a judge, "spare us the lies. We know exactly what happened that night. We have witnesses. We have evidence. And we also know what you did afterward, or rather what you didn't do. You didn't look for Eleanor. You didn't go to the police. Instead, you began planning how you would divide her assets if she never appeared again." Daniel staggered as if he had been struck. "Who are you? What do you want from us?" "I am someone who knows an abandonment when she sees one," Matilda replied, repeating the same words she had said to me that fateful night. "And what do I want? Justice." It was then that Sophia entered the room, carrying a folder. We hadn't seen her come in, but she was clearly waiting for the opportune moment. "Daniel and Megan Vance," she said formally. "I am Sophia Alcazar, Mrs. Eleanor Vance's attorney. I am here to inform you that, as the current occupants of this property, you are being evicted. Furthermore, we have enough evidence for a criminal case for endangerment of a vulnerable person, as well as attempted misappropriation of assets." Megan started to cry, not tears of remorse, but of panic. Daniel, on the other hand, tried to compose himself, the lawyer in him taking over. "This is ridiculous," he protested. "You can't prove anything. It's her word against ours." Sophia smiled coldly. "It's not just her word. We have witnesses who saw you abandon her on that road. We have records that you did not report her disappearance. We have emails and messages exchanged between you discussing how you would benefit if she never reappeared. Shall I continue?" Daniel collapsed into a chair, defeated. Megan continued to cry, now muttering accusations against him. "You said no one would know. You promised it would be simple." I watched the scene with a mixture of emotions: sadness for the family I had lost, relief for finally facing the truth, a strange sense of power for being in control of the situation. But mostly, I felt pity. Pity for the desperate man before me, who was once the boy I loved more than anything in the world. "I don't want you to go to jail," I said, surprising everyone, including myself. "I don't want to completely destroy your lives." Daniel looked up, confused. "Then what do you want?" "I want my house back. I want my assets back. I want you to admit what you did, not just to me, but to yourselves. And I want you to understand what you almost lost forever: the chance to be better people." Matilda looked at me with a mixture of surprise and admiration. This wasn't exactly the plan we had discussed. I was supposed to be relentless, let them face all the consequences. But in that moment, looking at my broken son, I decided that true justice was not in total destruction, but in the opportunity for redemption. "Sophia," I called, "what would be the terms of an agreement?" The lawyer, professional as always, quickly presented the conditions. Daniel and Megan would have 1 week to leave the house. They would return all my assets and documents. They would sign a confession detailing the abandonment, which would be kept as a guarantee. If they ever tried anything against me again, the document would be used. And in return, Sophia concluded, Mrs. Vance will not press criminal charges against you. There was more, of course, financial consequences, restrictions. But the essential part was that they would have a chance to rebuild their lives, albeit from scratch, and with the constant memory of what they had done. Daniel and Megan, cornered and without options, agreed to everything. While Sophia handled the details, Matilda led me out of the house, to the garden where I had so often sat to read, watch birds, and dream of a future I believed would always include my son by my side. "You forgave them," Matilda said, not as a criticism, but with curiosity. "Why?" I looked at the clear afternoon sky, because the difference between them and us lies precisely in that, in the ability to show mercy when we have the power to destroy. Matilda was silent for a moment, contemplating my words. "Perhaps you are right," she said finally. "When Edward abandoned me, I gave him no chance. Maybe, just maybe, I should have done things differently." For the first time since I met her, I saw genuine vulnerability in Matilda's eyes. "It's never too late," I said softly, "if you want to look for him." "He died 2 years ago," she interrupted, her voice low, "alone, in a public hospital. I only found out after the funeral." I placed my hand on hers. "I'm sorry." "Me too," she replied, and I realized she was referring not just to her son's death, but to everything that had happened between them, to all the lost opportunities. When Sophia finished with Daniel and Megan, we returned to the mansion in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. I had confronted my son and obtained justice, but not in the way I had initially imagined. Instead of the bitter satisfaction of revenge, I felt something deeper and more lasting. Peace. "And now?" Matilda asked when we arrived. "Now," I replied, "we begin the next phase." The house I recovered from Daniel and Megan was no longer a home for me. It was filled with memories, some good, others too painful. I decided to sell it as originally planned and use the money to create a foundation dedicated to helping elderly victims of family abandonment. "The Aurora Foundation," I suggested to Matilda, "in honor of the dawn I saw when I left the darkness of abandonment behind." She loved the idea. "It will be a more public arm of what we do here," she said, a perfect compliment. In the months that followed, I immersed myself in the work of the foundation. With the invaluable help of Sophia and Matilda's team, I discovered skills I didn't know I possessed, for organization, for public speaking, for connecting with other people who had gone through similar experiences. The Aurora Foundation grew quickly, attracting donations and volunteers. We created programs for psychological support, legal assistance, and social reintegration. Every new face that came to us reminded me of where I myself had been just a year before, lost, desperate, not believing there could be a new beginning. As for Daniel and Megan, we kept our distance, but we didn't lose sight of them. Through Matilda's discreet surveillance networks, I learned that they had moved to a smaller city, where Daniel worked in a modest law firm and Megan taught accounting classes. They lived simply, struggling to rebuild their lives. I didn't feel joy at their difficulties, only the hope that they were learning something valuable. One afternoon, about a year after the confrontation, I received a letter. The envelope was simple, the address handwritten in Daniel's script, which I would recognize anywhere. I hesitated before opening it, fearing what it might contain. Matilda, who was with me in the room, noticed my apprehension. "Do you want me to leave?" she offered. "No," I replied. "I'd rather not be alone for this." I opened the envelope with trembling fingers and began to read. Mother, I don't know if you will read this letter, and I wouldn't blame you if you decide to throw it away unopened. I don't deserve your forgiveness or your attention, but I need to say a few things, even if it's just to the paper. What I did to you was unforgivable. There is no justification, although I spent months trying to invent one to feel better. The truth is, I was consumed by greed, by selfishness, and I betrayed the purest and most unconditional love I have ever received in my life. Yours. Since that day at the house, Megan and I have lived with the weight of what we did. Our marriage ended 3 months ago, not because of the money or status we lost, but because we finally saw each other for who we really are. I am trying to be a better person. I work as a pro bono lawyer 3 days a week, helping people who can't afford legal representation. It's not much, and it certainly doesn't erase what I did, but it's a start. I saw on the internet about the Aurora Foundation. It looks like a wonderful thing. Exactly what you always wanted to do. I am proud of you, although I have no right to feel it. I am not asking to come back into your life. I know that bridge was burned by my own hands. I just wanted you to know that your words that day about giving me the chance to be a better person meant something. I am trying to honor that chance. With love, though I don't deserve to use that word, Daniel. When I finished reading, tears were streaming freely down my face. Matilda reached out and took my hand, a silent gesture of support. "Are you going to answer?" she finally asked. "I don't know," I admitted. Part of me wants to believe he has really changed. Another part fears it's just another manipulation. "We can verify," Matilda offered. "Find out if what he says about the volunteer work is true." I thought for a moment. "Yes, let's verify. But even if it's true, I'm not ready to have him back in my life. Not yet." Matilda nodded, understanding. Time heals, but it leaves scars. Some relationships never go back to what they were, and maybe they shouldn't. Her words resonated with me. Over that year, our own relationship had deepened in ways I hadn't expected. Matilda, with all her toughness and determination, had become not just my mentor, but my closest friend. We shared not just a mission, but a mutual understanding that came from having walked through the same valley of shadows. As the Aurora Foundation grew, so did my role in Matilda's larger organization. I became a sort of counterpoint to her. Where she saw revenge, I sought redemption. Where she applied force, I tried compassion. Together, we formed a balance that benefited all the women we helped. And there were many. Each month, new stories came to us. Wives abandoned after decades of marriage, elderly mothers left in hospitals, grandmothers evicted from their own homes by greedy grandchildren. Each story was unique. Each woman had her own pain, but the pattern was painfully familiar. "How can there be so much cruelty in the world?" I asked Matilda one night after hearing a particularly shocking case. "It's not cruelty, necessarily," she replied thoughtfully. "It's indifference. People become so obsessed with their own desires and needs that they simply stop seeing others as complete human beings, especially older adults. It's as if we become invisible after a certain age. But we are changing that," I affirmed, with a conviction that grew every day, one woman at a time. One autumn afternoon, 2 years after my rescue, Matilda called me to her private office, a place where she rarely received anyone. It was an austere room with a large oak desk, walls covered with books, and surprisingly, no technology in sight. "Eleanor," she began with an unusual seriousness even for her, "I need to discuss something important with you." I sat in the chair opposite hers, worried by her tone. "What happened?" "My health is failing," she said directly without preamble. "The doctors give me a year at most." The news hit me like a punch. Matilda, despite her wheelchair, had always seemed indestructible to me, a force of nature unshakable and eternal. "No," I protested. "There must be treatment specialists." "I've already consulted the best," she interrupted gently. "It's degenerative and irreversible. I've been dealing with this for longer than you imagine." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because you already had enough to deal with, and because I myself was in denial." She smiled, a fragile but genuine smile. "But that's not why I called you here. I called you because I need you to take over." "Take over?" "All of this." She made a broad gesture, indicating not just the office, but the entire mansion, the organization she had built. "I want you to be my successor, Eleanor." I was speechless. The responsibility was immense. Not just the mansion and its resources, but the network of people who depended on us, the women we had yet to find and rescue. "I don't know if I can," I finally admitted. "You built all this from scratch. You are exactly who should continue," Matilda interrupted firmly. "You bring what was always missing in my approach: balance, compassion, the ability to see beyond the pain to the possibility of healing. This organization needs that to survive long term." She opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. "Here is everything: legal documents, bank accounts, contacts, information on every current case. Sophia is already aware and will help with the transition." I took the folder with trembling hands. "What if I fail?" "You won't," she replied with unshakable confidence. "Remember that night in the rain when I found you? I told you your son and daughter-in-law would regret it bitterly. And they did, didn't they? But not in the way I originally planned. It was your influence that brought the possibility of redemption into the equation." She came closer and took my hands in hers. "That night changed 2 lives, Eleanor. Yours, obviously, but also mine. You taught me that justice doesn't have to mean total destruction, that there is strength in mercy. It is that lesson that I want you to continue after I'm gone." In the following months, we worked side by side to prepare for the transition. Matilda taught me everything about the inner workings of the organization, the contacts, the methods, the resources. As her health deteriorated, I took on more and more responsibilities, always with her advice and guidance. It was painful to see her weaken, that woman who had saved me with such strength and determination. But even on her most difficult days, her mind remained as sharp as a razor, and her will indomitable. 6 months after our conversation in her office, Matilda passed away peacefully in her sleep. I was prepared, of course. All the arrangements had been made, all the documents signed. But nothing could prepare me for the pain of the loss, for the void her absence left in the mansion, in the organization, in my life. The funeral was discreet as she wanted, only the closest people, me, Sophia, Arthur, Clara, and a few other long-time employees. There were no relatives. Matilda had outlived them all. After the ceremony, I found an envelope in my room with my name on it, handwritten by Matilda. Inside was a letter and a small golden key. "Eleanor, if you are reading this, I am no longer here. Don't be sad. I lived exactly as long as I needed to live and did exactly what I needed to do, including finding you. The key I'm sending you opens a small box in the back of the second drawer of my desk. Inside, you will find something I always wanted to give you, but never found the right moment. Remember, what I built was not just an organization for revenge, but a sanctuary for women the world tried to erase. Continue that work, but do it your way. The compassion you bring is what was missing in my approach. And finally, a piece of advice. Never forget that night in the rain. The woman you were and the woman you became. There is power in that transformation, a power that will continue long after we are all gone. With love, Matilda. With tears in my eyes, I went to her office and opened the indicated drawer. There, I found a small carved wooden box. The key fit perfectly, and when I turned it, the lid opened with a soft click. Inside was an old black and white photograph of two young women smiling at the camera. I turned it over and read the inscription on the back. Matilda and Elisa, 1965. Next to the photo was a silver brooch in the shape of an aurora, sunbeams rising on the horizon. I immediately recognized the face of the other woman in the photo. It was my mother, Elisa, who had passed away more than 10 years ago. Matilda had known her. They had been friends. Suddenly, it all made sense. Matilda hadn't found me by chance that night. She had been looking for me, perhaps watching me for some time, waiting for the right moment or the most desperate moment to intervene. I placed the brooch over my heart, feeling a connection that transcended time, uniting 3 generations of women, my mother, Matilda, and me. Each of us had faced abandonment in our own way, and now it was my turn to transform that pain into purpose, that loss into a legacy. That night, alone in the office that was now mine, I made a promise. To Matilda, to my mother, to all the women who were still out there waiting to be found, I would continue. 5 years have passed since Matilda's death. The mansion remains as it was, imposing and welcoming at the same time, but its purpose has expanded in ways that perhaps even she could not have foreseen. The Aurora Foundation has become a nationally recognized organization with branches in 3 states. We no longer work in the shadows. Although certain operations still require discretion, most of our work now takes place in the light of day, with the support of authorities, other organizations, and even politicians who share our mission. I transformed part of the mansion into a permanent shelter for elderly women who have nowhere to go. The rooms that were once empty are now full of life, of stories, of women who found not only refuge but a new family. Clara, now in her late 70s, is practically the grandmother to them all. Arthur is still with us, though his responsibilities have changed. Instead of just a chauffeur and bodyguard, he now coordinates our security team, training young people to help in the rescue and protection of our charges. Sophia became my closest partner in managing the foundation. Her legal expertise remains invaluable, especially now that our work is more public. Together, we have managed to pass state laws that increase protection for seniors and criminalize abandonment with greater severity. As for Daniel, we maintained minimal contact over the years. We verified that he was indeed working as a volunteer lawyer, helping people without resources. Eventually, I replied to his letter, a brief but honest response, saying that while I couldn't forget what had happened, I recognized his efforts to change. We established a cautious truce, with rare phone calls on special dates and occasional email updates. He never remarried after Megan. He is fully dedicated to social work and, from what I know, lives a modest but dignified life. In the few times we have met, there is always a palpable discomfort between us. The scars of the past are too deep to disappear completely, but there is also a mutual, albeit distant, respect, which may be the most we can hope for. One spring morning, 5 years after Matilda's departure, I received an unexpected visitor. A young woman, no more than 30, appeared at the mansion's gates, asking to speak with me. My name is Diana Sterling. She introduced herself when I received her in the library. Matilda Sterling was my grandmother. The revelation shocked me. Matilda never mentioned having grandchildren. She didn't know about me, Diana explained. My father was Edward, her son. He never told her about my existence, and I only found out about her after he died. Diana had the same piercing eyes as Matilda, the same determined posture. She told me how she found diaries and documents among her father's belongings after his death, revealing the complex history between him and Matilda, culminating in the abandonment that changed her life forever. I spent years trying to piece it together, she said. I found out about the Aurora Foundation through a news report. When I saw your picture and read about the work you do, I knew I had found my grandmother's legacy. I offered Diana a cup of tea, the same tea Matilda loved, as I absorbed the revelation. Did your father ever talk about Matilda? Only at the end of his life, when he was very ill, he spoke of a strong woman who had built an empire from nothing and how he had made the biggest mistake of his life by abandoning her. Diana paused, looking out the window at the gardens. He died with remorse, but also with a strange peace, as if he knew his mother had found a greater purpose. She did, I confirmed, and she helped many other people find theirs too. Diana smiled shyly. That's why I'm here. I want to know the work she did, that you continue to do. I want to be a part of this, if you'll let me. I'm a social worker. I've been working with seniors for 5 years. I looked at the young woman before me, Matilda's blood, the continuation of her lineage that she never knew existed. There was something poetic about it, a cosmic justice that closed a cycle. Matilda had lost a son, but now her granddaughter was returning, as if the universe were trying to balance the scales. I think Matilda would be very happy to know you exist, I said, feeling tears in my eyes, and even happier to know you want to continue her work. In the following months, Diana became an integral part of the Aurora Foundation. Her training as a social worker brought a new perspective to our programs. She had Matilda's determination, but also a sensitivity that likely came from her own experiences, growing up with a father marked by remorse, seeking redemption. One quiet afternoon, I took Diana to Matilda's private office, which I had kept intact as a kind of memorial. I showed her the photograph of her grandmother with my mother and the Aurora-shaped brooch. Our lives were intertwined in ways we couldn't imagine, I explained. Your grandmother saved me that rainy night, but in a way, I saved her too, by giving her the chance to rethink her concept of justice, to make room for the possibility of redemption. Diana held the brooch with reverence. It's strange to think I never knew her, but I feel as if I've always known who she was. She is still alive through the work we do, I replied, and now, through you as well. It was Diana who suggested the expansion that would transform the Aurora Foundation again. What if we helped not only the victims, she proposed, but also worked with the aggressors? Awareness programs, family therapy, mediation. The idea took me by surprise. You want to help people like your father? Like Daniel? I want to prevent other people from becoming them, she clarified. Prevention is as important as rescue. Imagine if someone had intervened before your son abandoned you on that road. Diana's proposal was bold, but it made sense. It was the next logical step, not just picking up the pieces after the tragedy occurred, but working to prevent families from breaking apart in the first place. It was something that would never have occurred to Matilda, with her more binary view of victims and aggressors, but it aligned perfectly with my own journey of understanding and forgiveness. We created the Restart Initiative, an arm of the Aurora Foundation focused on families in crisis, offering counseling, mediation, and support before abandonment occurred. We invited psychologists, social workers, and family law specialists. And in a move that surprised everyone, I invited Daniel to participate as a consultant. Why? Diana asked when I told her my plan. After everything he did? Precisely because of it, I replied. Daniel has lived both sides of this story. He was the son who abandoned his mother, but he is also someone who went through the painful process of recognizing his mistake and trying to repair it. His experience is valuable. The first meeting between Daniel and me at the Foundation's facilities was tense and emotionally charged. He looked older than his 50-something years, with completely gray hair and deep lines of worry on his face. When I introduced him to Diana and explained who she was, I saw something in his eyes, a mixture of recognition and perhaps envy for her having had the courage to seek a connection that he had destroyed. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel asked me when we were alone. "Why give me this chance?" "Because I believe people can change," I answered honestly. Not completely, perhaps. Not to the point of erasing the past, but enough to create a different future. He nodded, visibly fighting back tears. "I don't deserve your generosity. It's not about deserving," I said. "It's about choice. My choice and yours too, if you decide to accept." Daniel accepted, and his work in the Restart Initiative proved surprisingly valuable. His ability to talk to families in crisis, especially with adult children overwhelmed by caring for elderly parents, came from a place of genuine understanding. He knew the desperation, the frustration, the dark thoughts that could lead someone to consider abandonment as a solution. "I'm not here to judge you," he would say in the support groups. "I'm here because I've been in the darkest possible place, and I can say with certainty, there is a way back." As the program grew, I began to notice something fascinating. The presence of Diana and Daniel in the same organization created a strange parallel to the original story of Matilda and Edward. It was as if the universe were giving us a second chance, not to erase the past, but to rewrite it with a different ending. One night, after a particularly intense day at the foundation, I found myself alone in the garden, sitting in the same gazebo where Matilda had shown me the images of Daniel and Megan so many years ago. The moonlight illuminated the rose bushes, and the scent of the flowers filled the air. "I hope you're proud," I whispered to the starry sky, imagining that perhaps, somehow, Matilda could hear. "We've transformed your legacy into something even greater than you imagined." A gentle breeze caressed my face, gently swaying the roses. For a moment, I had the distinct feeling of not being alone, as if a familiar and affectionate presence were beside me, nodding in silent approval. I remembered the night it all began, the relentless rain, the cruel abandonment, the mysterious figure emerging from the darkness in her wheelchair. "Pretend you're my daughter. Your son and his wife are going to regret this bitterly." Matilda was right, but not in the way she had initially imagined. Regret came, but so did the possibility of redemption, for Daniel, for Diana, for myself, and perhaps in some way even for Matilda, through the work we continued. At 67, I was no longer the frail, frightened woman who had been left on that road. I had found an inner strength I never knew I possessed, a capacity to transform pain into purpose, abandonment into connection, and most importantly, I discovered that it is never too late to start over, even after the worst of betrayals, even on the darkest of nights. When I went back inside the mansion, the lights of the main hall illuminated the portraits on the wall, no longer just the women Matilda had helped, but also those we had welcomed since. Dozens of faces, dozens of stories, dozens of rebirths. Among them was a special portrait, Matilda in her wheelchair, with her determined and slightly austere gaze. Below it was a new portrait, recently added, myself sitting in a chair similar to hers, but with a softer smile. Diana had insisted on adding my photo to the gallery. "You are part of this story too," she argued, perhaps the most important part. I touched the aurora-shaped brooch I always wore, the same one I found in Matilda's box. It symbolized everything we had built together, the promise of a new dawn after the darkest of nights. The front doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was late for visitors, but at the Aurora Foundation, emergencies had no schedule. Clara came to meet me in the hall, looking slightly flustered. "Mrs. Eleanor, excuse me for bothering you at this hour, but there's someone—" Before she could finish, a young woman entered, holding up an elderly lady who could barely stand. The young woman's face was marked by tears and exhaustion. The older woman seemed disoriented and scared. "Please," the young woman said, her voice trembling, "we found you through the Foundation's website. My parents left her at a gas station. They said they were going to the bathroom and never came back. That was 3 days ago." I approached the elderly lady, taking her trembling hands in mine. Her eyes, clouded by cataracts and confusion, met mine. "It's all right now," I said softly, feeling the echo of Matilda's words that rainy night. "You are safe here." The lady squeezed my hands with surprising strength, as if I were her last hope in the world. And in that moment, I understood with crystal clarity the true purpose of everything we had built. It wasn't just about justice or revenge or even redemption. It was about creating a place where the cycle of abandonment could finally be broken. "Clara, prepare the blue room," I instructed, still holding the lady's hands. "Arthur, call Dr. Chloe for a full examination. Diana should be notified in the morning." As the team mobilized with the efficiency that had become our trademark, I guided the elderly lady to the living room, where the fireplace always remained lit on cold nights. "What is your name?" I asked gently. "Louisa," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "Louisa Valdez." "Welcome to Aurora House, Mrs. Valdez," I said, helping her settle into a comfortable armchair near the fire. "Your old story ends here, and a new one begins." As I watched her accept a cup of hot tea from Clara's hands, I thought about how life moves in circles. Matilda had found me when I was at my most vulnerable, just as I now found Louisa. Daniel had abandoned me, just as Louisa's children had abandoned her. But the crucial difference was that now there was a place to interrupt that cycle, to transform abandonment into a new beginning. Aurora House would continue long after I was gone, just as it had continued after Matilda. Diana would take my place one day, perhaps with Daniel's help, finally tying together the loose ends of a story that began with pain, but did not need to end that way. I looked out the window at the starry night and silently thanked that mysterious woman in her wheelchair who had appeared out of nowhere on a desolate road and changed the course of so many lives, starting with mine. "You were right, Matilda," I murmured. "They did regret it bitterly. But what you didn't foresee is that regret can be the beginning of healing. Time, as I've learned, is a patient teacher. 10 years have passed since Matilda found me on that dark road, and 8 since she departed. At 72, I see the world with a clarity that only age and experience can bring. My body may be more frail, but my mind and spirit are stronger than ever. The Aurora Foundation has blossomed beyond the most optimistic expectations. We now have 12 shelter houses across the country, each following the model that began in that mansion. Diana took over as executive director 3 years ago, allowing me to gradually step back from daily operations. Her marriage to a dedicated doctor brought the first child to the mansion in decades. Little Beatrice, a girl with lively eyes and an indomitable spirit, just like her great-grandmother. Daniel, at 60, has become a pillar of the Restart Initiative. His transformation was complete, from an ungrateful son to a tireless advocate for the rights of the elderly. We never regained the close relationship of before, but we found a new form of connection through our shared work. One autumn afternoon, as I watched the golden leaves fall in the garden, Sophia came to find me with a grave expression. "Eleanor," she began, "I have news about Megan." The name still evoked a pang of discomfort, even after so many years. After her divorce from Daniel, Megan had disappeared from our lives. As far as we knew, she had moved to another state and started over completely. "What happened?" I asked, noticing the seriousness on Sophia's face. "She's in the municipal hospital, terminal cancer, no family, no friends, no resources." The irony of the situation was not lost on me. "How long does she have?" "Weeks, maybe less," Sophia replied. "She specifically asked to speak with you. It was a surprise to the hospital's social worker who contacted us when Megan mentioned your name." I was silent for a long moment, contemplating the strange twist of fate. The woman who had conspired to abandon me was now herself, abandoned in her final moments. "Are you going to see her?" Sophia asked. "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "Schedule it for tomorrow, please." When I told Diana about the planned visit, she was visibly disturbed. After everything she did, why bother? "Because some lessons can only be learned when we look our past in the eye," I replied. "And because no one deserves to die alone, not even Megan." The next day, Arthur drove me to the hospital. Megan's room was small and impersonal, with only basic medical equipment and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. When I entered, I barely recognized her. The beautiful, arrogant woman I had known had been reduced to a frail, sallow figure in the bed. Her eyes, however, still held a spark of recognition when she saw me. She tried to sit up, but weakness prevented her. "Eleanor," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "You came." "I came," I replied, sitting in the only chair beside the bed. "Sophia told me you wanted to talk to me." Megan nodded, closing her eyes briefly as if gathering strength. "I need to tell you something before I go." I waited as she coughed, her thin body shaking with the effort. Finally, she continued. "It was my idea," she confessed, looking at me directly for the first time, "to leave you on that road." Daniel hesitated, but I insisted. I said it was the only way to ensure we would have everything. The confession didn't surprise me, but I still felt a pang of pain hearing the confirmation. "Why?" I asked, not with anger, but with genuine curiosity. "Greed," she replied simply, "and fear. Fear of ending up like my own mother, who died in poverty, dependent on strangers. I thought if we had your house, your money, we would be safe." She let out a bitter laugh that turned into another coughing fit. What an irony, right? I ended up exactly as I feared, alone, with nothing, depending on the charity of others. I looked around the sterile room and felt a mixture of emotions, pity, but also a strange sense of closure. "I didn't come here to judge you, Megan," I said finally. "I came because you asked." She extended a trembling hand in my direction. I hesitated for a moment before taking it in mine. Her skin was cold and dry as paper. "I wanted to ask for forgiveness," she said, tears running down her sunken cheeks. "Not because I deserve it, but because I need to say it before I go. What I did, was unforgivable." Silence filled the room as I considered her words. Years ago, it would have been impossible for me to offer forgiveness to this woman, but time and experience had taught me lessons the younger Eleanor could never have understood. "I forgive you, Megan," I said finally, surprising us both with the sincerity in my voice, not because what you did was acceptable, but because forgiveness frees me as much as it frees you. Tears of relief streamed down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "There's one more thing I need to ask. What is it?" "I don't want to die here," she said, looking at the impersonal walls. "Alone, in a cold place like this." I understood immediately what she was asking. It was a bold request considering our past, but also deeply human. "I'll speak with the doctors," I said, getting up. "If your condition allows for a transfer, you can spend your last days at Aurora House." The surprise and relief on her face were palpable. "Why?" she asked, echoing my own question from moments ago. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because Aurora House exists precisely for people who have been abandoned," I replied. "And because, regardless of what you did in the past, I believe everyone deserves dignity at the end." 3 days later, Megan was transferred to Aurora House. Diana protested initially, but eventually accepted my decision. Daniel, surprisingly, supported me from the beginning. "She's dying, Mother," he said simply. "Revenge has no meaning at this point." We set Megan up in a bright room with a view of the garden. In the days that followed, I saw the surprise in her eyes every time she received gentle care, a kind word. It was as if she were experiencing unconditional generosity for the first time, precisely from the people who had the most reason to hate her. A week after her arrival, she called me to her room. She was visibly weaker. Her breathing was labored, her eyes sunken in dark sockets. "I need to ask," she said with difficulty. "That woman in the wheelchair, the one who found you that night, who was she?" The question took me by surprise. "Why do you want to know?" "Because for the last few days, I've been dreaming of her," Megan replied. "In my dreams, she watches me, not with anger, but with understanding, as if she knows something I don't yet understand." I sat beside her bed, adjusting the pillow to help her breathe. Her name was Matilda Sterling. She was a former judge who dedicated her life to helping women who had been abandoned, like me, like she herself once was. Megan's eyes widened slightly. She was also... Yes, I confirmed, by her own son, in circumstances similar to mine. And what happened to her son? I hesitated, considering whether I should tell the whole story. He suffered the consequences of his actions, lost everything, and eventually died alone, never having reconciled with his mother. Megan closed her eyes, absorbing the information. But with me and Daniel, it was different, she murmured. You gave us a chance for redemption. Yes, I agreed, that was my choice, and Daniel's. A faint smile touched her pale lips. Thank you for that last lesson, Eleanor, for showing me that there is another path besides retribution. 2 days later, Megan passed away peacefully in her sleep. Daniel was by her side, not as an ex-husband, but as a fellow human on her final journey. We arranged a simple but dignified funeral. To my surprise, several residents of Aurora House attended, women who had known Megan only in her last days, but who understood, perhaps better than anyone, the value of a compassionate end. After the funeral, Diana found me in the garden, sitting in my favorite spot near the rose bushes. She sat beside me in silence for a while before speaking. I never fully understood why grandmother chose the name Aurora for all this, she said finally, but I think I understand now. Oh? I asked, curious. The aurora comes after the darkest night, she explained. It's not just the end of darkness, but the announcement of a new beginning. What you did for Megan, it showed me that a new beginning is possible even in the final moments of a life. I smiled, moved by her understanding. Matilda would have been proud of you. Of both of us, Diana corrected. You completed what she began, Eleanor. You transformed a project of justice into a mission of healing. That night, alone in my room, I reflected on the strange path life had laid out for me. 10 years earlier, I was a broken woman, abandoned on the side of a dark road, without hope or future. Now I was the matriarch of a true family, not of blood, but of shared purpose. I picked up the aurora-shaped brooch, which I never left my side, and held it against the light. The golden rays seemed to pulse with a life of their own, as if they contained the essence of all the stories that had intertwined in this mansion over the years. Matilda, Edward, Daniel, Megan, Diana, myself, and so many other women who had found their way to us. Abandonment, I realized, didn't have to be the end of the story. It could be, paradoxically, the beginning of something new, an opportunity to discover an inner strength we might never have known we possessed. For Matilda, that discovery led her to create an empire of justice. For me, it led to a mission of compassion and healing. And for future generations, for Diana, for little Beatrice, for all the women who would still cross the gates of Aurora House, perhaps it would mean the chance to break the cycle completely, to create a world where no woman need fear being discarded when she was no longer considered useful or convenient. As sleep enveloped me, I had a clear vision of Matilda, not in her wheelchair, but standing tall and proud as she must have been before her accident. Beside her was my mother, Elisa, both smiling in approval, and between them a figure I recognized as Edward, Matilda's lost son, finally reconciled with his mother in the peace that transcends this life. You did well, they seemed to say. You completed the circle. I awoke to the first ray of sunshine streaming through the window. A new day, a new beginning. The aurora had come again, as it always did, dispelling the shadows of the night, and I was ready to greet it, grateful for the winding road that brought me here, even with all its pain and challenges, because in the end I understood the deepest lesson Matilda had taught me that rainy night. Sometimes it is precisely in the moment we are abandoned that we discover who we truly are and what we are capable of. And that discovery can change not only our own life, but the lives of generations to come. Now, if you like this story, click subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what part left you speechless? Oh, and don't forget to become a member to get access to exclusive videos I don't post here. I'll see you there.